When we think about morality, we tend to think about what someone should always do or should never do. I don't think of it that way. I think that's a terrible way to think about morality. I think about morality in stereo, as I'm looking at paired opposite things to do depending on the situation, and panning between them as you could say the wisdom to know the differences that make a difference to what you should do in different situations. I will simplify here by saying that I think of two different kinds of interactions with another person. One is the give and take we do with decent folks. This is the kind of conversation where if someone wants to lead the conversation in a certain direction, you accommodate them, you follow them out to some extent, and they do the same for you. It's a reciprocation, it's a give and take kind of conversation. There's another that's the opposite. In fact, it'll kill you to do that, to accommodate where someone else wants to frame it. This is the power play kind of conversation. This is a conversation with someone who isn't really interested in content. They're only interested in winning. You can think that they play three-dimensional chess. They're not. They're just playing me up, you down. And the way they play it is through frame dominance. The winner of that kind of interaction is the one who can get the other person talking about what the winner is talking about. All that matters is if you can steer the conversation so that you are always the one who decides what we're talking about. So when you think about Trump supporters, that's what they've got going on. That's their joy. I call it Trumpiring. They are trumping by umpiring, by saying, no, we're not going to talk about that. That's out of bounds. I dismiss that from my court. I only permit this topic. We will talk about this topic. How do you deal in that kind of conversation? Well, it's just terrible for you if you do the give and take, where you just act like you're receptive and are willing to follow them out wherever they want to take the conversation. No, you need a different strategy for that, and it is competitive on that front. You need to be able to counter-dominate, to make them talk about what you want to talk about. And it's not really even about what you want to talk about, because remember, this is just a game of frame dominance. And so the goal here is to confidently and successfully lead them to any topic that you choose over the topics they choose. For a while, we were calling what they're doing whataboutism. That's how they turn the corner. They ignore whatever they're talking about. They ignore whatever you're talking about. They want to talk about what they're talking about. Not because they want to talk about it, just because they want to win through frame dominance. So you got to have your own counter strategies for that. And for that, what you need to do is think about topics that they will feel compelled to talk about. And the obvious ones are anything that really interests them, that they love to hear themselves talking about. So if you want to, you say, diffuse the competition, the Trumpiring competition over who gets to dominate the conversation, just bring up something irrelevant to the topic at hand that they want to talk about. Talk about their hobbies, talk about their kids, whatever. Just change the subject to that. Ignore whatever they are framing it as the conversation. Just ignore it and say, yeah, how are your kids doing these days? Or have you bought any new motorcycles lately? Or whatever, what shoes are you liking these days? The other one, which they use a lot as a topic that compels you to talk about whatever they frame up, is attacks. So this is not if you're trying to diffuse it, but if you're trying to kind of abuse them back for the abuse they're doing. So people are often compelled to talk about whatever they need to in order to defend themselves. So if you're stuck dealing with someone who dominates in frame, always frames it to whatever they want to talk about, before you talk to them, plan up some topics that you could talk about that they would feel compelled to talk about. It could be things that delight them, or it could be things that scare them enough that they have to defend themselves. That's their game. And my rule, I don't actually believe in the golden rule. I believe that it's not a rule, because it doesn't decide who should accommodate whom. But I do have this basic assumption, which is anything that you do to other people is fair game for them to do back onto you. So if they're going to do this frame dominance thing where they simply attack you so that you are compelled to talk about whatever in defense of yourself, fair game for you to do it back at them. And try to find their vulnerabilities. And their vulnerabilities are not their weaknesses, it's their strengths. This is a point that Karl Rove made a while ago. You don't attack people on their weaknesses, you attack them on their strengths. If you can get them defensive about what they pride themselves on most, then you've got them on the run. And that's how you win that kind of conversation. A very different kind of conversation from the kind you have with decent folks, where it's give and take, and you let them steer the conversation for a while, and they let you steer the conversation for a while. Now, I've mentioned this before. I do private consulting on this stuff. I help people figure out how to deal with bullies, narcissists, abusers, gaslighters, all of that. And gaslighting, by the way, is a perfect example of that kind of frame dominance where you keep on steering the conversation towards whatever gives you the most power over the other person. So I've been doing this private consulting for decades now. I offer a free half hour just for you to get a sense of what it is. It's strategic consulting on how to deal with difficult people. And for it, a lot of our work is on getting clear on the different situations that we deal with and the different behaviors that are called for, because often different situations call for opposite behaviors. In give and take conversations, you relax into the other person's framing. In frame dominance competitions, you don't relax into their framing. That's how they win. So get in touch if you're at all interested. Like I say, free half hour, just to see if you're interested in working with me on these things. Thanks.